Hey parents and coaches, are your kids using the right glove? The most important skill for youth athletes to learn is how to play proper catch. The problem is, most youth gloves are made with bad leather and are too big for small hands. They actually make it harder to play catch. That's why former Major League Baseball shortstop Kevin Smith created Cali gloves. Cali gloves are crafted from 100% Japanese kip leather and are the perfect size for kids. All Cali gloves come with palm slits, finger loops, and elastic wrist lacing that encourage proper hand placement, the right closing patterns, and give kids more confidence to go make plays. Cali gloves even allow parents to break in the glove without stretching out the fit. It's the glove Kevin wishes he had growing up, and the glove all his teammates want for their kids. Visit caligloves.com to learn more and help your kids play better catch. That's Cali Gloves, K-A-L-I gloves.com.
Welcome to this week's edition of the Dugout Dish Podcast. I'm Andy Kirikides, joined by my wonderful co-host, Keith Glasser. How we doing?
Great. How are you?
We got another guest on tonight. Excited about this one. Why don't you give it the old intro?
Sure do. Longtime friend, someone who I met longer than I would probably readily like to admit ago in this game, when he was coaching at Stony Brook, and now is the head coach at East Tennessee State University. Tonight we were joined by Joe Pennucci. Joe, thanks for joining us, man.
Happy to be here. I wish I had a cool background like you guys, but besides that, this is awesome.
When you have Justin doing this for us, we got cool stuff we can throw up behind us.
I love it. It's good stuff.
Before we get going, just give our listeners a quick rundown of how you ended up at ETSU.
You got it. I'll give you the quick version. I grew up in Colorado. I was a Colorado guy and took a job at Dominican College, which was in Rockland County, New York. Division II, went there, put a U-Haul on my Tacoma and drove across country. Decided to take a shot at it, so I did that. Worked at a little IBM gym at the same time I was coaching, so I would open up this gym in the morning at this IBM facility. Went to practice and recruiting and stuff in the afternoon, and then it was an interesting time, but it was cool. Rick Giannetti was the head coach, still is now. Rick's awesome. He gave me a great opportunity and spent 2 years there. Didn't screw it up, I guess, and then got the one of the assistant jobs at Stony Brook. Coach Sank, who just retired this last year, gave me an opportunity to go there, and I spent 11 years with him at Stony Brook, and again, just like Dominican, couldn't have been with a better person and worked with better players. And obviously we did some really special things while I was there. And then from there on, kind of ended up in Tennessee, and I'm in the head coach here at East Tennessee, I think 8 years now, if I'm not mistaken, which seems to go awfully fast. So yeah, a couple decades involved in this madness. And that's the quick version of where I am now.
Yeah, you glossed over some of the successes at Stony Brook, and we had one of your former assistant coach colleagues on previously. And for those of you who are not familiar, Coach Pennucci was a part of the staff that took Stony Brook to the College World Series, which is one hell of an accomplishment for any program, but for you guys to do what you did at Stony Brook, I think speaks volumes for what you guys were able to build there. And you guys are coming off a pretty awesome year at East Tennessee as well with the NCAA tournament appearance. So obviously things are on the up and up down in Johnson City, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, Johnson City, no question. Yeah, no, I mean, the success at Stony Brook was awesome. We had such good players, and I think the cool part about Coach Sank was he let, you said you had Mike on, who clearly is not as nearly as cool as I am. So this will be much, much better than Mike's. But when he let us work, that was the best part about it. Like, he let us fail, succeed, figured things out, good idea, bad idea. And it was cool to just have some ownership to that. And, we had such a great experience, such, big leaguers and, a bunch of regional appearances and really, really some good players. And I think here, we tried to create a similar atmosphere where our coaches, I took that page out of, both Coach Giannetti and Coach Sank's book of letting our guys work, letting them do their thing, letting them, like when people say to me that, I'm so grateful for Coach Marshall, I'm so grateful for Coach Penzino, like that makes me feel good. That makes me feel like those guys are we're doing the right thing. So, those are the learning blocks that I think you do. And I'm just fortunate to have the right guys. And I'm grateful that I had that opportunity as well.
I think the one thing too, we touch on this at least once when we have people on, is when you talk about opening gyms, when you first start getting into coaching, like it was a lot less glamorous, I think, when we all came up in this business.
You could say I was an idiot. I mean, I moved across the country for a $5,000 job, and I was making $2,500 as an assistant baseball coach and $2,500 as the cross country coach. Now, the cross country coach was our pitchers that ran cross country. So the best part was I'd go to these cross country meets, and these other guys were real. Like they knew what they were talking about, like shin angles and like stuff. So I would look at him and I'm like, hey, dude, give me something to say just so I act like I know what I'm doing, So he'd say, oh, we'll talk about his knee. And I said, all right, I get your knee in this. And then, so like that was it. And then the gym thing, I mean, that's really what kept the lights on for me. So no, there's not a lot of glamour when it comes to that.
No, my first job was at West Isle as a GA for about $6,000. And then I was the volley as the second assistant at Siena for 2 years. Doing all those odd jobs. But, I think like now I sound old when I say this, like now I hear all these assistants that are making money and I'm like, gosh, like I'm happy for it from the game standpoint. But right. I'm like, we had to pay our dues a little bit more when we came up in this business. But I think it's all like working with Coach Sank, like I had a very similar experience with Coach Rossi and Carl, even Coach Rundles at West Isle. Like I lovingly call them dinosaurs. Like, Coach Rossi just retired, 2 years ago after 55 years? He's older than all of us. And, Carl was at RPI for 37. Like those guys that allowed you as a young coach to figure it out on your own and work and fail and see what worked and what didn't. Like I remember times sitting in the office and kid would leave and be like, that was a great visit. And Coach Ross would be like, he's not coming here. Come on. Like we just nailed that visit. He's like, yeah, it doesn't matter. He's not coming here. Without fail, within like 48 hours, that kid would call me like, hey, thanks for everything, but I'm going to St. John's. And I'm like, God, I thought we had that kid. He we never had a shot. And just like years, like when you get older and you become a head coach, you look back and you're like, okay, I get why he made me do these things. I get why he let me fail and do all these like things when I was 26 years old, 25, not even 23, 24. And I was like, God, this is so dumb. Why am I doing this? Right. And then you become a head coach and you're like, okay, I get it. And then you give it back to him. Like he rented our field the one time. He showed up and he was like, you're late. And I'm like, I'm not late. He's like, I was sitting down the road. You just showed up. I was like, I've been in my office for the last hour and a half getting stuff done before I came out. He was like, well, I didn't know that. I was like, well, learn from the best.
Coach Ross he is a trip, man.
He's the best.
Oh, he's a legend.
That guy's seen more baseball than all three of us probably combined.
No,
and that's saying something given that we have close to 50 years of experience with all three of us. And he had 55 just in college.
I know.
Things that dude saw. And,
I know. And that was like, last year was bittersweet for me too, just seeing, Coach Sank retired. And when he called me and told me about it, and I was like, man, I was congratulating him more than like being anything else. Cause he earned it. It's like, you earned it to go whenever you want.
But I think it's important for younger coaches to hear, like, a lot of these guys actually know what they're doing. I think sometimes, like as players and as coaches, it's like, oh, the game has passed this guy by. Like, no, it hasn't. It hasn't passed them by. Like they might be set in their ways with some things, but like, go look at their resume, man. They've won more games at this level than you've probably ever played in your whole life.
Yeah.
So you might want to listen.
And I think guys like that let, the other guys do some stuff too and let them grow. And I mean, that isn't easy for a lot of coaches to do. And when you've been around and doing a program and built a program up, like Coach Sank has, and still allow that freedom for your assistants, man, that's special. And that's kind of what molds you. And like I said, I've tried to do that, and I've been lucky to have the right guys to do it. So, and it's just helped for the development of our players.
Speaking of the ETSU program, first question we always start with is, how do you guys go about identifying players that are a fit for you guys? And like, kind of what does that look like in terms of where you're looking, how you're finding out about them? Walk us through that process a little bit.
Yeah. We have, I can't say that we have just a mold of like, hey, this is, the player that we are always going to get, right? It's a speed thing. It's a power thing. It's a defender thing. Like, yeah, there might be some pieces of it that, are of value a little more than others. But, I think when we're talking about players in the office and Coach Pins, or Coach Marshall or myself or whoever sees a guy and we're discussing him, it's just, what version of our team does he fit, and how is that going to make us as a program better, right? And then that being said, how can we continue to make that guy grow and get better, and get him to be in the best version of himself? And I think those are the pieces of it. But for us, I mean, it could be some context that we have. It could be some, some guys like yourselves that we trust and we've known for a long time that will call us on a guy, and I know that we're going to be on the right guy. It might not be the best fit for us right now, or it might be the best fit for us right now. Same thing with like a high school coach that says, hey, you might want to check this guy out. And then we can follow him in the summer, with the summer teams and the summer programs and so forth. So from the high school standpoint, I think it's a lot of following programs and staying connected with the guys that you trust to be able to follow and evaluate and see what you like. And then from there, those evaluations just kind of follow what our needs are at that point, right?
Yeah, it seems that the context thing is an important piece of the puzzle for a lot of guys. Like you talked about going to guys that you trust, and we talked about it a little bit before we started, and how difficult it is sometimes to get a really good read on a kid and figure out. I think most baseball guys will tell you, figuring out if a kid's good enough is probably the less difficult part of the process, and figuring out if he's going to be a right fit for your program. Is he going to gel? If he's a pitcher, is he going to gel with Coach Penzino? If he's a hitter, is he going to be able to gel with Coach Marshall? How do you go about peeling that onion back? Like, what are some important things that you try to do, or kind of clues that a kid will leave that you feel like he's got a chance to be the right fit for you guys from a character perspective, not necessarily a talent perspective?
Sure. I do think the character perspective with high school players is probably the most difficult, right? Because you might not have as much evidence of who they are, when they're a JUCO guy or potentially a transfer, you might have a little bit more context, or, you might know more people that have been in the trenches with them at that level. But I think having conversations with them, seeing what programs that they come from, I still believe in high school players. I might be like, one of, 5 people in the country that can actually say that, but I still think high school players are allowed to be good. And I think like if we can, to me, like that's a big piece of what a lot of these guys are asking when they come to campus. It's like, hey, like that's probably the most question I get. It's like, boy, you guys just can't recruit high school players anymore, right? And I know I'm going on a tangent a little bit, but yeah, I think you can. And, we were fortunate the last couple of years. I mean, 2 years ago, 2 of our weekend starters were freshmen. Last year, we started 2 freshmen in a regional, right? In a championship type season. And I think those guys are allowed to be good. And it's just determining, to answer your question, I think it's a difficult one. I don't know that there is a a magic potion that I could sprinkle and say like, that's the best character guy we can get. I don't know that that's the case, but I do know, I ask a lot of questions with the family. I probably talk to the families about where they're from, what they do, what their grandparents did. Where did you grow up? Where'd your grandparents grow up? Like I get really interested in seeing like that stuff. Like, what does mom and dad do every day? And I do think there's a little bit of connection between kind of what they do and how they're going about stuff, in the interactions they have with their kids. And I think there's a piece of that could be important. Does that mean it's a great fit for you? I don't know I'd be lying to you if I said, I have this master document that, it all works out. But I think like the more questions you ask and the more people that you can communicate with about those guys, you're going to get to the bottom of a lot of things, And I also think, coming from good programs, I mentioned that a little bit. I don't necessarily mean summer programs, but, I think, especially the places that care about high school baseball, which there's still some that do. And coming from those programs that win consistently, man, like I think about some of those guys that we've had, through 20 plus years of doing this. And it's like, he was the quarterback of their football team, and, they were in the playoffs, and he was their shortstop and pitcher on their state championship team in baseball. And I think there's still a little bit of like, winning edge to them and understanding like what that means. And they're probably, whatever sport they're in, they're probably learning some of that things and what it takes to be successful, what it takes to fail, what accountability looks like. I think those are kind of pieces that are important. Doesn't always happen. And I can tell you, like, there's some stuff, you might make a decision on a kid and you don't know enough. But he's left-handed and you like his arm. So you're like, oh, whatever.
Yeah. You touch on like the winning piece, and I think it took me a while to figure out how important that can be. And it was something that Murph used to focus on, like, who is this kid around all the time? Is he around good players? Is he around good coaches? What's the standard at those particular programs? Like you mentioned, multi-sport guys, like, are they good at other things? Are they competing in other sports? And it's always interesting to see how, and I wish I knew that earlier on. I wish I'd kind of figured that piece out. But once you do, I do think that stuff leaves clues. Like, you've been doing it long enough that you start to put some of that stuff together, and you start to figure out, like, this kid's got a chance. And like, you never know what's going to happen when they get to school. And we've talked about this on the podcast. Like, the transition to college it can be tough on kids because you're in a completely new, ultra competitive environment with some grown ass men, and you're no longer the kind of the top of the food chain anymore. And you gotta, how kids react to that is really tough to predict.
Yeah, that's critical, man. Really difficult. But I think, like, I don't know that that's changed a ton because, I think about, like, if we all think about like our freshman year, like the awkwardness that was, but how cool that actually was. Like, I can close my eyes and envision, like, oh man, this is weird, but like, this is a blast. And I think, like, if your environment's right, and you got the right players and you're presenting the right environment for your players, I think that's going to give them the right atmosphere to succeed. And that doesn't, they're probably going to hear stuff that they don't want to hear. They're probably going to be more held accountable for the nonsense that, maybe mom and dad let them get away with, or their high school coach might have let it get away with, whatever. It could be a missed assignment. It could be being late. We deal with all that stuff on a daily basis. And it's like, when they leave our program, I feel like, they're going to know when to be there, what time to be there. And they're going to understand that, those things are super valuable. And then, I say this to them all the time. I said, like, if you're where you need to be, when you need to be there, and you're on time and you can communicate a little bit, I don't care what job you have, you're going to be good at it. And if you can make a friend and maybe you communicate a little bit more, you're probably like a manager or something. You know what I mean? Like, and all of a sudden, like, it's just kind of all the way it works. Like, and I think we do try to do our best to do that off the field. And then I think it does connect on the field as you go. So those are some big pieces to our program. I don't let them slip an inch when it comes to little things like that, because it's not about the missed assignment. Nobody actually cares about the missed assignment in psychology 101 your freshman year in March, or that's irrelevant down the road, right? But it's about doing what you need to do when you need to do it. And there's a connection to that as you go through your program and as you go through life. I do believe that, I mean, I watched my parents wake up every day, go to work, do their job, come back, take care of us. And it was like, okay, that's what you're supposed to do. Right. And that's kind of what I tried to do. I tried to go to school. I tried to do this stuff. I don't know if I was very good at it, but I did it. And I think like we try to have those things with our guys to just understand, like, this is the standard that we do. Now you can exceed that standard and then you're going to be great, but this is the standard that we're getting to.
I think one of the hardest things for the younger player, the high school kid, if you will, and even as they get a little bit older, but like, is that communication piece. Like that was something that I would hammer our guys on, not in a negative way, but like, hey, if you stayed after class for 10 minutes to talk to your professor and you're going to run late to practice, like just text me. I don't care. But if you show up late without saying anything, then I'm going to be like, why are you late? And it's I stay after class. Like, you couldn't text me that 25 minutes ago? And it should, and like, it's not necessary, to your point, it's not about the being late. It's just about like, hey, I'm not going to be where I'm going to be on time. Let me just let coach know so that he knows I'm not, being an idiot and forgot that we had practice at 2:00 today, whatever it might be. But I think that like, it got to the point where, and I was happy about this, but it got to the point where my guy at RPI, where I was like, I had to like kind of pull the reins back. Like, I don't need to know everything. I just need to know like where you are and what you're doing and why you're not here. That's really all I need to know. Sure. But I think it's hard sometimes, like if you're not going to, and I do think it's a little bit different. Like we grew up in an era with coaches where like it didn't matter. Like if you told them you were going to be late, like you were still going to be in trouble. Like it wouldn't have mattered if I did, like, Heels probably would have been like, okay. But like it's burned into my memory of guys walking on the field late at practice and Heels being like, where were you? Like full well knowing everyone was at class. Like, I was at class. Like, oh yeah, I'm sure you were. Like burned into my memory of like, okay, if I'm going to be running late, I have to let somebody know. Yeah. It's just like, it's things like that I feel like it's those things. And I think a lot of it too, especially from a coaching standpoint and specific, I don't know if it's specific to baseball, but like those are the little things that can be like culture shock for you when you get to campus, because you're not used to having to hold yourself accountable. You're more or less holding yourself accountable to making sure that people know where you are and what you're doing. And I think sometimes that's a hard jump for kids to make. And I think that it's just one of those things that you just have to continually hammer them on, because it does, like, same thing you do. Like I used to tell my guy, like, this isn't just about this. Like, and again, I don't care that you didn't write the paper. Right. Like, if you have to write the paper for class, you should probably write the paper for class. Like that's just how this goes.
That's just how it goes. Yeah.
But figure it out. I also coach kids that actually really cared about school. Whereas I majored in baseball and minored in history and psychology. So there's that aspect of it too. I do, like, I find it interesting, like, because you had mentioned earlier, like people saying like, you can't even recruit high school players anymore. And we hear the same thing on our side of things. And it's like, well, I've flirted with tweeting this out when I see everyone on the flurry of like, until I see somebody tweet #blessed to be committed to the transfer portal, like you still have to recruit high school players. Like you can't actually get into the portal without having first set foot on a college campus. Like that's not really how this works. Like you still have to recruit. Like, does it mean that some schools might recruit less high school players than they have in the past? Yeah, it does. And that's fine. That means the floor of college baseball is kind of being raised, but you still have to be able to be a college baseball player to enter yourself in the transfer portal to eventually, and that like maybe transfer somewhere else. You might not even transfer up. You might be transferring down. And I'm not anti-portal. I've said this a million times on here. Like, I think it gives kids more options, and it gives coaches more options, like it or not. We grew up in a time where we're like, if you missed on a player, like, we're pretty close to making that kid's life miserable so that he'd leave school and you'd get your money back. Now, at least you can be like, hey, it ain't going to work out here. Like, we've tried everything. It's not going to work out. Like, you're a great kid. We think there's a place for you. Like, let's try to find somewhere else to go. And, that gives more options for people because things do change. But this narrative of like high school baseball's dead and it doesn't matter anymore. And you can't recruit high school play. Like, you have to set foot on a college campus before you can transfer. You can't just, the transfer portal doesn't have a coach that's extending offers and accepting people. Like, what's the GPA requirement for the transfer portal? Like, is there an SAT score for it? Because I don't know. I haven't seen one yet.
No question about it.
Sorry, that's my rant.
I'm with you. No, I that is a big question I get though a lot, like about.
No, and rightfully so. Like, I completely get it. Like, the landscape of college baseball is completely different than what it was when we played, when we first started coaching. I mean, it's different than it was 5 years ago. It's not even close to what it was 5 years ago between NIL and the transfer portal and the rules and all this other stuff. Like, it is a completely different landscape than what it was, but it's also not the worst. Like, if you can't talk to a kid as a Division I guy until August 1st of his junior year, like, we were committing kids who were freshmen before that. Like, I remember being at Siena in 2009, like, we offered a kid who was a sophomore. Like, that kid didn't even have his license yet. Like, at least now, you look at it, it's like, some people, I've talked to a bunch of guys who are like, I don't even know how many 27s we're really going to offer because I don't know what my roster looks like at the end of this spring. And like, that allows a lot of these kids who can use if you're smart about it, use the next 7, 8, 9 months to really develop and show up and show out in February, March, April, May, June of next year. And all of a sudden it's like, wow, this kid's a dude, where everyone else kind of like, you didn't have money left for that kid. You were going to try to get him to walk on, or you're whacking somebody to get this kid, whatever it might be. Now it's like, well, we have money. Like, we have a ton of money. Hey man, this kid's really good and he fits our program. We've done our homework. Hey, let's let it ride and see what happens. And I think it's better for the kids. It's better for the families. You can make a more informed decision if you go about it the right way than what we were previously doing. Not that system was broken, but it's okay to change it and make it a little bit better. Now, is it going to be perfect right away? No, it's not. Like, who knows what this designated student athlete looks like and all this other stuff. Like, it's not going to be perfect right away, but I would argue in some respects that it's a better system than what we had 5, 6, 7 years ago. Sorry, that was my rant.
Good system. No,
I'm usually good for one.
Yeah, you're allowed. It's your damn podcast.
How are these new rules with the timing? I mean, that's kind of been in place, but like the roster reduction, the transfer portal, has that changed anything that you guys do timing wise? Roster construction wise, has that fundamentally changed how you guys are going about it, or somewhere in between?
Yeah, I think it's a little in between. I mean, I do think you're going to, you'll probably be, I think you're a little more skeptical early on, right? You're maybe a little bit more, the decision-making process, I think, is going to be a little bit more rigorous because, that we're right. Let's make sure that this is the right fit right now for this guy. And for our program, because, we don't want to go back on it. But at the same time, you don't know what your roster looks like. I mean, that thing could change in June, and you could have went a whole different direction, a year before. So I don't know that the construction of it changes. I think you still got a pretty good feel of, how many pitchers you want, how many position players you want, kind of what is going to fit our particular program. But there's definitely, it certainly slowed it down, and it slowed it down for everybody. I don't think that we're any different with that. But I just hope that you're kind of making, a few better decisions than maybe you would in the past, because like you mentioned, you're offering, sophomores that don't drive, you don't know if that kid's going to be a good player at all. I mean, we've seen that go one way or the other, right? As a sophomore, it could go great, or it could go, he doesn't get any better, and it could go sideways. So I think you got a little bit better indication.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, Keith said on it, but like, I think the new rules in the long term, once people get over like the shock of it with the roster cuts and the timing of the contacts and the transfer portal, I think in the long run, it's actually going to be better for the student athlete. Right? I think coaches are going to be forced to be a little bit more patient. They're going to have to make better decisions. I think eventually people are going to learn that the transfer portal isn't this catch-all safety of like, well, if I don't like it, I can go into the transfer portal, because you're seeing a lot of kids go in there and not get recruited. So I think people will probably start making some better decisions, and you might see some more kids be willing to develop and fight for their spot in a program versus, well, I didn't get exactly what I wanted. So I'm going to go somewhere else. And I think giving kids more time to develop, I think it opens up more doors for them.
I hope that's true. I hope that's true. I don't think that's the case right now, but
no.
I do hope that's true. I hope that happens. I mean, I think it's being used in a couple different ways. I mean, I think Keith is right. Like, it does give an opportunity for a kid that might not play in your program to go and play somewhere else. But it also kind of gives those guys that are good in your program to go somewhere else. And you're kind of caught in between of trying to figure out, how am I supposed to feel about it? And I don't feel good about it most of the time. Most of the time I don't feel good about it. And I think it's silly and I don't know what you're doing, but hope it works, right?
Yeah.
I think here's my, and we're talking about the portal, so I'll give you what I think about it. But I think like long term with the portal hoppers, which there are some, if I asked you, where you went to school, you could easily tell me, right? I'm an alum of, I guess it's pretty simple with you too, but my question's going to be down the road for some of these guys, like they're an alum to nothing. And like that kind of sucks a little bit. And I do think like the 30 for 30 on all this in a few years, I have a lot to say, so I hope I'm on that. But it's going to be a lot of like weird stuff. It's going to be like, yeah, I made $1 million, or you know what, I never found a place to play, or I left this thing and I, have no connection to any school anymore. And it's really weird. Like it's so weird, it's so weird. Because when a guy leaves your program, like, I'll be honest, like I'm not happy about it. And I don't think it has to be this kumbaya world where I'm okay with it. Like I'm not. And people could dislike me or not, but I'm not. I'm not happy about it. Did they better themselves? I don't know. Maybe. Guess time will tell. But like, it's just, there's so many unknowns with it. And I think like at the end of the day, it's like, are guys going to graduate on time? Who knows? Apparently nobody cares about that anymore. So that's not that big of a deal. Secondly, it's like, what are you associated with? And what are you, and I don't know the answers to those things. You know what I mean? So that's why, like I can appreciate some guys that are good players and are all conference type of players and are, draft type of guys that stick with your program and stick with programs. Like I truly respect those guys immensely because they're getting pulled in so many different directions and advised by so many different people that, hey, you can do this here. You can make money here. You can play at this big place here, and I understand that. I do understand that. But at the same time, like, I don't know that I have to like it.
No, and it's such a funny thing being on a different side of it now. Cause like I can put myself in your shoes. And like, if I was at William and Mary in 2016 and we lost our future 9th round draft pick catcher to the transfer portal because he was a dude, like, yeah, I'm probably not super fired up about it because like, hey man, you're kind of where you are because this is where you came. And like, we helped you get to where you are and like, you can accomplish everything you need. And then on the other side of it, you look at it and it's like, well, some of these kids are getting like life-changing money, but those are the stories that you hear about. You don't, that's the stuff that goes out on social media and the D1 baseball post, the kid who transferred and went to, Florida State or transferred and went to Arkansas, but they don't talk about the kid who goes into the transfer portal and doesn't end up anywhere.
Yeah, there's a big percentage of those guys too.
And that's kind of the untold story where, you do get a lot of people that seem to have their hands in the cookie jar here, trying to help guys make decisions. And, you wonder what their intentions are there, but it's such a slippery slope. And maybe I'm trying to be optimistic, but I'm hoping it sorts itself out. Cause I think at some point people will have a reality check of like kind of what it is, that it's not this free for all, like grass is greener, one stop shop to get everything fixed. And, a lot of times the guys who have the most success, and if there's college guys who listen to this or high school guys that are listening to it, like sometimes you just got to fight it out. And sometimes the best place to be is the place you're at. Like if you've had a ton of success somewhere, you don't have to go anywhere else in today's world of baseball to go get drafted or get notoriety or go play in the Cape League. Like if you're really good, like nobody cares.
Yeah.
Shoot, MIT had a 9th round draft pick this year. Like if it mattered that much, they wouldn't have drafted him.
Sure. It makes me laugh when I hear that stuff, like the draft leverage stuff and all that. That makes me laugh. Like I've been really fortunate to coach some good players, first rounders, third rounders, fifth rounders, that back in the day, 30th rounder. Like and I'm a mid-major guy. That's where I've been. And we've had good players. And it's even here, like, last, 3-4 years, we've had a draft pick. And it's funny because, you can, it's irrelevant. Like if you're a good player and you continue to do what you're supposed to do and you're doing the right things, and you'll be fine. And I think that's just something that people say, oh, well, it's leverage. I don't know if it's leverage for what. Like, I don't know. We had a third rounder this year. What was his leverage? Leverage was he was a good player and could have left if he wanted to, and he didn't.
I think it's just using the excuse. It's the opposite end of the spectrum from like, I'm not getting what I want, or these guys don't like me, or whatever the old excuse used to be of why guys would leave. Now it's the opposite end of the spectrum of like, well, I get more draft leverage and I can go play in whatever league. Like, I agree with you. I know my rant earlier may not have necessarily explicitly said that. I don't know. I've said this, like, I don't know if I was still coaching at RPI, if I would be thrilled about sending guys into, my business guys into summer ball that were really good, because they might end up in the transfer portal and going somewhere else. And, I have a hard time reckoning with that. It's easier, obviously, on the outside now, but there's something to be said about being an alum of a program that you were at for 3-4 years. And look, in some instances too, right? Like if you're a JUCO guy, like maybe you're only there for 2 years, but still, like, but being, that 7-time transfer guy because you had 15 years of COVID left over, like what do you do? Like, what is that? The other question that I always have on the outside, and it's irrelevant for this podcast, is like, what does your transcript look like? Like, how are we continually getting you into school?
Nobody cares about that.
You know what I mean? Like, I just like from the outside, like I see it, I'm like, you've been to like 9 schools. Like, there's no way all these credits transfer. Like, how? Like,
and the fun,
you're on your first bachelor's. Like, you should be.
The thing is still a deal too. It's like right. It's still a deal. It's weird. It's like, how is this a thing? Because I don't think you cared about it, but I guess you do.
Right. It's bizarre to me. And I just think that you try to leverage the opposite side of the spectrum. And I do think that there are a lot of people that are, whether they have ill intent or I tend to believe that it's just a lot more misinformation than anything else, of people in your ear that don't necessarily know what this whole thing kind of looks like. And, look, it's great to get drafted. It's great to play pro ball, but I mean, the draft is 20 rounds. Do you know how good you have to be drafted?
No doubt.
It's 20 rounds, and they can draft high school guys and JUCO guys. So like, you have to be an outlier to begin with. It doesn't really matter. Like, you know, if you want to argue with me that like transferring from, you know, Binghamton to Florida takes you from being an 8th rounder to a 1st rounder, and like that's a substantial amount of money. Like, okay, I could probably get behind that a little bit, but like you were still good enough to get drafted.
Right.
And like, you know, really all that means is you're going to get a couple more shots being a 1st rounder than you would an 8th rounder.
Right.
But, you know, I don't, you know, and when you opt into the big leagues or into pro ball, like, I don't know if anyone knows this, but you're also going against the best in the world. Like, just because you got drafted here in the 20 rounds, like we're signing 14-year-old Dominicans that are like 94 to 96.
Right.
And, you know, dudes out of Puerto Rico and guys out of like Mexico, like Japan, like we're like, this is a global game. And you still like, you're going up against guys that you've never even thought that you had to go up against. And to leverage it, I guess to bring it full circle, like to leverage it for what, to your point? Like a couple extra $100,000? Like the chances of you making it to the show is infinitesimal. So
Sure.
like, you know, I would rather develop where I'm at, have really good friends and a great experience in college, and try to be really good at baseball and see where that gets me.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's just me. Like I'm, you know, I don't know if I can speak, you know, I don't speak for everyone obviously, but for me, like that's what I did. That's what I wanted. And, you know, I don't know if I could have thrived as a student athlete in this environment. Not that I was good enough.
No, but look at you, man. You found your calling. You're great now.
You know what I mean?
I was in that guy who went into the portal and nobody gave me an offer.
Yeah, that would be me. Be like, I'm leaving here. I'm going to the grass is greener, and then I'm stuck in the portal by myself.
That's right. I went in the portal this year too, but nobody took me.
Nobody likes me. It's even more demoralizing than telling them I was leaving.
Yeah. Well, I think we've exhausted the portal stuff.
Me too. Yeah, let's never talk about it again.
No, I think, but you know, to kind of close it up, like I think it's an important thing that at least it gives some people some stuff to think about. Because yeah, we find a lot of people use it as an excuse as to why they're not getting recruited, and you know, other people look at it as a leverage point. Like there's all different perspectives that you can have on it, but it exists. Everybody's entitled to their opinion on how it works, and depending on where you sit, your viewpoint's going to be different. You know, your viewpoint's going to be way different than the high school coach whose kid might be impacted from a recruiting perspective on the transfer portal, or you know, the kid who is able to go in and get 250 grand from an SEC school to go play. Like everybody's going to have a different opinion, but it exists. It's impacting things, and you know, it's refreshing to hear someone like yourself talk about, like, you know, it still starts with high school guys, and like those guys are allowed to be good. And
yeah,
I think a lot of people, when you really poke on it, if you want to have a program that's sustainable, I think most guys would tell you like it's got to kind of start with the high school guys, because the culture setting, like if you're swapping out a bunch of transfers every single year, like you're building teams, you're not building a program. Like you've worked your ass off at ETSU for the last 8 years to establish the culture that you talked about at the beginning, where guys know what the standard is. Like that doesn't happen by accident. That doesn't happen in 1 year just because you put it up on a whiteboard and say, here are the rules. Like that happens because your seniors have been there with you and they know that that's the standard. So when that freshman comes in, they're introduced to this is how we do things. And I think that's how I would imagine that's how Coach Sank had as much success. And it's something that you grew up as a coach learning from him for 11 years at Stony Brook. And you know, you talked about how you tried to bring that into your program. And I find it hard to believe that programs are going to be sustainable by bringing in 12, 15, 18 transfers every year. Can it work? Yeah, I'm sure you can run into some stuff. Like if you get enough really, really talented kids in one spot, like, yeah, you're probably going to be pretty good. But sustainability being able to compete year in and year out, I don't think that happens by accident. And I think it's hard to do it with a bunch of guys who are showing up for one specific reason. Like guys who show up as freshmen in Johnson City, like they want to be there. They want to play for you and Coach Pins and Chad. And I think that moves the needle ultimately and I think that high school kids should view it that way too. Like don't make a commitment to a place with the idea that that's a stepping stone. Because if you're 1 foot in and you're 1 foot out, you're not going to be stepping anywhere.
No, and you're not going to be as good enough. You're not going to be the best player that you can be. You're not, just because it's tough. This game's too hard. It's too humbling to not be all in. I mean, it's just too challenging for that. So yeah, I totally agree. I think, and that's like I look at it. We got this year a week of practice, a week and a day, I guess, of practice, and like I see some of our freshmen, and I think they're some good players. I think there's some skilled players. Now, where does that all shake out? I don't know, but it's like I think that they're skilled players and they're good players, and they're going to compete, and they're going to push those other guys, man. They're going to push those older guys to be like, shoot, like I can't settle here. I gotta get right. And I think that competition's important. And the older guy, I think, is helping that younger guy understand, like, hey, you know what? Like, when this is how we communicate, when the fly ball communicate, this is how, and we let our guys kind of sort of figure that out naturally and figure it out. And it's interesting to see like what older guy will jump up and say something, or what group will be organized by a different guy. And some of that stuff's kind of fun to watch, and you can sort of see, a couple guys that left our program last year with graduation or the draft, to see these older guys kind of step in and be like, hey man, this guy's right on my tail. Like I gotta get after it. But at the same time, like, hey man, this is how we do our bands, and hey, this is how we're going to go about our business when we're doing our throwing program, whatever else. So it's been fun to watch the last week or so, because it's been different, because it's new guys, but it's been fun. And I think like, we have the right staff and the right players that just kind of getting it going, but it definitely has taken some time, and it's a constantly moving target. Building the right atmosphere and sustaining it is a moving target.
It's college baseball's got such an interesting dynamic when you kind of look at it the way you're talking about, where you got guys that are competing for jobs, and like how you perform in the fall. Like if you're a freshman, that's your introduction to college baseball. Like that's what you have when you get to the spring. That's what you have to go off of when you're making decisions on a lineup. Those kids don't have the luxury of like, well, hey man, he hit 330 last year with 10 pumps. Like that dude gets some rope. Like he's going to be in the lineup. He's going to get a chance to fail a little bit. Like when you're a freshman, like you kind of got to come out guns blazing and prove like, hey, I belong here. But at the same time, that same group of dudes needs to figure out a way to pull all in the same direction while also being competitive enough to where I'm going to beat you out, but I'm also going to help you.
Yeah.
And it was a change for me as a player, and it was a cool thing, specifically when I was at William & Mary, because we had a pretty special older group when I first stepped in there in 14. And it's interesting to see that dynamic play out of like an ultra competitive environment, but the awareness that like I also need you, because if we're going to win games, like I need you to be good, but I also don't want you to take my spot.
Right.
It's
pretty cool. It is cool. Yeah, absolutely. There's some specialness to that as you see it kind of develop and stuff. Definitely.
So talking about like freshmen getting on campus and everything, what do you think are some of the bigger challenges that those guys have when they're transitioning from high school baseball to college?
I think just the life, once they get through the routine, right? The life stuff. Once they realize like, I'm on my own, I can kind of essentially do whatever I want, whenever I want. But at the same time, man, that was a bad decision, because I wasn't ready to play that day, or I missed this, or I missed that. Like, I think the life part of it is probably the biggest challenge with some of those younger guys, right? Like we talked about that earlier. I think just them adapting. And once that once their feet settle in, I think you can really see when they get comfortable the kind of player that they are, and I think just some of the on-field stuff, I don't know if we want to talk about that, but the on-field stuff, I think it's just kind of understanding what they can get away with and what they couldn't, like what breaking ball might get a swing and miss at that, high school level, and what doesn't now, or how far a ball gets hit when you make a mistake here, and how far it didn't there, right? Or and offensively, some of the same stuff, like understanding like you're probably not covering, both parts of the plate. Like, probably, if this guy's really good, like, that's not happening, and that might happen, or whatever whatever your perspective is, or the situation is. But, I think, and on the defensive side, it's just what you can get away with and be consistent every day, because like you throw more, you play more, you're doing things more. It's like, well, that's why we have this throwing program. That's why we're putting you through this. That's why we're doing those things, because like we're expected to do this every day. And I think that's probably a part of it that, and you guys remember this, like those freshmen that kind of like they hit that little peak, and then, their freshman year, could be on either side of it. But I think because they run into it a little bit, because it's just different. They played last summer, and then they played in the fall, and then they might have played this summer, and then they're back at it again. And the weight program is different, and they're sore, and they're getting, like those are all the little things. But most of them, to my experience, especially, since, and even at Stony Brook, especially since I've been here, like the guys that come out on the other side are the guys that just put their head down and work. They work, they ask questions, they continue to do extra work. And it's awesome. It's awesome to see. And those are the things, but those are like the little challenges that I see. But I think those challenges are awesome, because like those challenges are like the springboard to you getting better. Right. And that's the coolest part about it. It's like, those are the pieces of it that it's like, man, like I see there's a senior on our team this year who was ineligible his freshman year. We were talking about him today. And like the maturity that I've seen from him 5 years ago to right now, it's like crazy. It's crazy. And I think that's the neat part about seeing that, but those are all the little bumps on the road that those guys have. And it's like the advice that I have for any young guy that is going into school, it's like truly enjoy what the awkwardness and fun and excitement that's happening right in front of you. Like just try to enjoy the hell out of it, because like you can only do it one time. It doesn't matter how many programs you go to and all the nonsense that's going on and all that stuff. Like you really only have one time to do that. And I think like the growth that you have with it is like really what's so cool.
Yeah, honestly, that's probably the thing that I miss the most about coaching is, the games are fun. For me, the games was about the guys, like make sure they're prepared, give them the information they need, try not to get in the way of them performing well. But I think watching kids like figure it out, watching them fall and helping them get back up. And, you're talking about the kid who was ineligible, and now you're seeing a completely different kid. Like that's the stuff that shows up that doesn't get talked about enough, because we're looking at stat lines and wins and losses, and like, yeah, all that stuff really matters. Like you got to win games, right? Like you don't have a job if you don't keep winning. But watching kids figure stuff out, grow up, mature, become better communicators, become better people, more thoughtful, more accountable. That's the stuff that they ultimately learn on that baseball field. And it's pretty rewarding on the back end of it. And like, you've been doing this long enough, like you've watched a lot of guys do a lot of really cool stuff. Like that's probably the thing that I miss the most. And, watching guys kind of figure it out, like freshman year, watching a kid, like, cause it's inevitable, it's going to happen. Watching the kid who, has got the really good arm, and he comes in, and the junior who's got 500 college at bats and is probably going to be a draft guy launches what that kid thinks is his best breaking ball. And like, you kind of giggle like, all right, okay. Nobody's ever done that to you before. Like, what are you going to do with that now? Right. And,
the cool part about it too, and I think this is like taking it a step further, but like the freshmen that have success, to seeing what that sophomore year looks like. And to me, like that's the biggest difference between like elite dudes and guys that just kind of end up being good players. Like
Yep.
that step is so critical because it's like you're freshman, you don't know any different. Like, I don't know. I guess I'm supposed to hit 370 with these. I don't know any different, right? Like I've never like, and then it's like when you have that expectation, you're like, holy crap! Like I haven't failed yet. And to see some of those guys, and we've, obviously we've all had those guys too. But like that's like the springboard to see, and how they can kind of go through that, and it's pretty cool to watch that because then you start to see those dudes that turn to be, really good players and elite type of dudes, that, are either still playing or maybe if they're not draft guys, there's really good college baseball players. But it's interesting because like, and hell, we could talk about that kind of stuff forever, but it's kind of fun to see that.
I do think anecdotally too, like those guys, that guy that you just described that was really good as a freshman and then figures it out and becomes like that elite player, like whether or not they play professionally, like those guys tend to be pretty successful early on in their professional careers. Whether not from a baseball standpoint, like when they go have a real job, like they tend to be pretty successful a little bit faster because it's like they have that work ethic, they have that drive, they have like not the it factor, but like they go about it differently. And like we've been around the game long enough to we've all seen it, but like that part is the fun part of like seeing that kid as a freshman or a sophomore, and then they make that jump, the proverbial jump that we're always asking when they're going to make, and they make it. And then all of a sudden, like you see how much better they get. And it's fun to watch from the outside of like, they're realizing how good they can get of like, wow, I'm a lot better at this than I even kind of thought I was. And that part's really fun. Like Jared Jensen, Andy was one of them. Like watching him like sophomore year into senior year was just so fun to watch. Like he went from a borderline all-conference player to an All-American and pitched and hit. And, I probably should have won pitcher of the year, but a dude who pitched in the big leagues was pitcher of the year, and then he hit like 420.
Now he's a Top Gun pilot.
Now he's a Top Gun pilot. That was kind of what I was driving at there. But, like
That's
some
cool.
of those guys, they're different dudes. And I like, that is like, I love that part. I loved that part of coaching. Like that was so fun to see that part of it. And I think like that, being a part of it. Right. And I think that's where some people get lost. Like you're not the reason, but you play a small role in that kid's development of being able to become the best version of himself, which is what I think like ultimately as coaches, we all want. Like, if I can be a small part of you becoming a better person, a better baseball player, then I think I've succeeded at my job.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like that's and it's just the day-to-day stuff that you see. Like, like some of my favorite parts of the day are just like when guys are throwing, just walking around BSing with them and kind of seeing how they're going about their stuff and talking to them about little things, but then maybe making fun of them a little bit. And like, I think like you see that just kind of how those relationships build, and like that stuff's so special, man. And to see those guys that, like you said, make a jump, but still have a fun personality and you have such a good relationship with, like, I mean, truly that's the reason that
I used to talk to guys during throwing when like they would be in thermals and dynamics. And I'm like, I don't even know what. It's like, I want to send a satellite out in space that rejects UV rays to stay longer. I'm like, dude, I've never thought about that once in my life. In my 36 years of being on this planet, I've never once thought of that, let alone like, and then I think back to when I was in college, I was like, I wasn't thinking about that when I was 20 years old. I didn't even think about it at 36. 20? Yeah. No shot.
Oh, man.
What's going on at Mad Hats on this Thursday night?
That's awesome. Yeah, exactly. Oh, there's plenty of that going on. That's happening. That's happening. That's funny.
All right. Closing question. Your infinite knowledge. If you could impart some wisdom on families and players who are going to or are currently involved in the college recruiting process, what advice or bits of knowledge would you like to pass on to the listeners?
I do believe that I've always said this. I've said this for years, that you should show interest where people show interest in you. I think, like, if because you just never know, that's a very broad comment, and some of the interest might be lower or higher, or whatever the kind of player you are. I get all that, but like, I think even if it's a response to a text, if it's a response to an email, if it's a response to a call, I think there's some value to that, because you just never know. You never know, like, the level that you think that you should be at, and where you probably end up, right? Or not even that, but it could be the best fit for you. It could be the best situation. Like, you might go to that place never thinking it's great, and you fall in love with the coaching staff, and you fall in love with the school, and you're like, man, I'm so glad that I responded to that. I think that's so important. And I've been saying that for years, and I don't know that it always gets across, but I do think there's a lot of importance to that. And then I also think, if you have somebody that is, because everybody loves their kid, right? And we all have a different perspective of our kid. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If you coached, it doesn't matter. None of it matters. Your perspective of your own kid is different. You might not, but it is. And if you have a trusted person that you can actually talk to that's in this game, like yourself and like your guys, to be like, hey, this is the region of the country he's looking at. These are the schools that he's thinking. Give me your perspective. And I think, like, that can really help you guide you in the right direction. Because if it's all like high end SEC, ACC, whatever division, and it's like, well, I don't see that happening for you. Or if it's all like, mid majors, and it's like, I don't know if that's going to happen for you, but we can try. Or if it's, I think that can help you not have the water's muddied as much as they can be in this process, and I think once you've narrowed that down to some degree, and you can find somebody that you trust, and you can do that, I think school camps are important, and I think they're more important now than ever. We have gotten at least 2 kids out of our camps since I've been here, and that's a lot if you think about it. Like, at least 2. And some of them have been really good players, like some of them the pitcher of the year at time, or an all conference guy. I think there's value to that. But again, I get it. You can't go to every single camp that's out there. But if you have a trusted person that can kind of guide you in the direction of, what, I think, Coach Penzino is awesome. I think it'd be a good fit for you. I know the rest of the staff. Go to the camp. I think let's see what they think of you. And I think there's value to that. But the biggest part of that is the truth, and the truth that you're going to hear that you might not want to hear. And I think that's the hardest part. I really do. But, the last thing is I mean, especially as young guys and as freshmen, like, understand that through this whole madness and all this crap, like, you're still allowed to be good players, and you're still allowed to potentially play at the Division I level. And I can say that because we've had guys do it. And we've had the freshman player of the year to all conference guys to whatever. And I think some of those guys get discouraged with that. The timeline might not be what you want, but who cares about the timeline if it's the right place?
No, there's a lot of truth in it. Like, I think a lot of people always ask the question of, like, well, do you play freshmen? Like, and I was always like, because we had the freshman of the year a handful of times when I was at RPI, like, you can go, look, man, like, we've had the freshman of the year. Like, if you're going to help us win, you're going to be on the field. You have to produce, obviously, but, like, we're going to develop you, and we're going to put you out there. But I think you're dead right too about that. And I'm glad you mentioned camps. And it's funny, I didn't say it at the start before we did the pre-show stuff, because everyone always has a different answer to this question. This is like our 65th interview, and I don't think we've had one repeat answer to it. And I don't think everyone's going through and listening to them, right? Like, well, I know no one's listening to them. But my point is, like, Andy and I love the on-campus thing. And we have a lot of our clients go to it and do those things for a lot of the same reasons that you mentioned. But I think there's a misnomer out there that, like, a lot of on-campus camps are money grabs. It's like, Some, sure, but the vast majority of them are not. Like you can tell, especially from a pricing standpoint, if it's $120, like they're not making a lot of money on this camp. So like what they're really driving at is guys that they're interested in, guys that might be interested in their school, that they haven't seen yet. And a lot of schools utilize the on-campus camp because you get to know the kid better. You get to coach him a little bit. Your kids get to meet that. Like the majority, I shouldn't say everyone, but the majority of camps probably have players working their camp. You can get a lot more information about that kid, and it goes back to the peeling the layer of the onion of like, how is this kid going to be a good fit for us? Because he might come to camp, and it goes both ways. And we talk about this with our clients too. Like it goes both ways. You could walk into that camp and be like, I don't really know, and walk out of there being like, I love Coach Pennucci. I love Coach Penzino. Like that's the place I want to go. Really hit it off with the kids, and the kids say the same thing. You think the same thing. Awesome. You could also walk away and be like, I don't know if that kid's going to make it here. And the kid might be like, yeah, I don't know if that's really going to be the right fit for me. Like, I don't know if I could really, I didn't really feel the vibes were positive, as the kids say now, with Coach Pennucci. Like, and that's fine. You'd rather spend the $100 to figure that out early on in the process or whenever it is, rather than show up and then after 2 weeks on campus be like, I made the wrong decision. This is not the place for me. And I think it's far better for kids to be able to kind of figure it out that way, because it puts you in your more of a natural setting for what you're going to be doing. And you can see, like, how do they coach? Is this something that, I could really see myself doing for 4 years? And conversely for coaches, like, can I coach this kid for 4 years? Because you spend a lot of time, and we talked about it roundabout way, but like you spend a lot of time with each other during the course of a college baseball season. Like we're talking 6 days a week, we're traveling, maybe not you guys so much anymore, but like, when we were at Marist and Stony Brook, like the first 4 weeks of your season, like you lived out of a bag. You're flying, you're taking 12, 13, 14-hour bus rides. Like you spend a lot of time with each other. And if you're not going to be able to coach that kid or really be able to do it, like you ask yourself as a coach, like, is it going to be worth it? And I would rather know as a coach and as a player on both ends of it, like I'd rather know by going to an on-campus camp and figuring out if this is the place for me. And I mean, let's face it, like you can go on a visit or a tour too. Like maybe the school isn't for you. Like maybe the program is great, but maybe the school isn't for you. And you'd rather know that part early too, because the baseball end of it is great, but I don't think the school's for me. Like I just don't really, I didn't like campus. I didn't, whatever it might be. Like you'd rather know then than later on.
We've had, by the way, my vibes are awesome.
I know they are. That's why you're here. I'm not questioning that anyone leaves there.
You can feel it through the screen. No, but I think like, I think you're right on. I mean, we've had guys that we've committed we didn't know anything about. Mm-hmm. I had no idea who they were coming. I didn't know they were showing up. Coaches didn't know they were showing up. Nothing. And it was like, who is that? I don't know, defender, arm, whatever he might be. Arm works really well. That's interesting. And then we've had guys that it's like, hey, we needed to get this guy on campus. Or, hey, another one is we've seen him a couple of times. Let's get him here. Like, there are so many different ways that we've gotten guys. And our camps have been really, really important for that. And I think, it's definitely valuable. But, whoever you guys' clients are, I mean, I think are fortunate because they got some good dudes, and I think they got guys that have been around it and I think are doing it for the right reasons. So I think you guys are going to advise them the right way.
Appreciate it. I remember, was it Cole Haig? Was that the kid from North Dakota, Andy, at Columbia?
Yeah.
I remember he showed up at camp. I was working Columbia camp. Cole Haig showed up at camp, and he's from North Dakota. Shows up to New York City for camp. No one knows who he is. And I saw him standing in line. And then he comes strolling in, shakes Coach Beretti's hand, goes to the dugout. And he put his camp shirt on. He looked like he was chiseled out of stone. No one knew who this kid was. And then proceeded to go out and run like a 6'5" and just hit 19 home runs. And it was like, But my point is, like, nobody knew who he was. And the kid ended up playing at Columbia and had a phenomenal career. Like, those things happen a lot more often than people think that they actually do.
They do.
You're better suited, I would argue, in a lot of instances, especially if it's an academic set or if it's an academic fit or, whatever, like if it's a school that you really like, you're better off in that route than going to one of the bigger showcases, because you show up with a showcase with 300 kids. I mean, not to say you're just a number, but you have to do some outlier stuff to get people to pay attention to what it is that you're doing.
Yep.
And I've worked those camps. I have nothing but good things to say about them. But when you're on the field for 14 hours, like I thought I was good at my job, but like I wasn't locked in for 14 hours. I got
I've done the same thing.
other clowns sitting behind home plate with me telling stories about stuff that are absurd that I'm laughing about.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But it doesn't mean we're not paying attention for everyone out there.
No. I guess that's true. Yeah. There's a ton of value to that for sure. I think that, I think you're right on with that.
I'll try to tie in the 2 points that you made, because I think there's context, and I think that in some ways they're tied together, like with the camp thing, which Keith already elaborated on, like is super valuable. Having somebody who can point you in the right direction ensures that those camps aren't going to be money grabs for people.
Yes.
And like, that's important, that if I talk to you or Coach Marshall or Pins and you guys get a read on a kid and you're like, hey, I like that kid, it's probably worth going to camp. If we can get feedback and it's like, hey, we're not looking for that spot. Maybe you're not looking for a catcher, or maybe, you're not looking for a corner outfielder. Well, maybe it won't be worth it, right? Or like, hey, you're not an ACC player, so maybe flying down to Tallahassee and going to Florida State's camp isn't going to be that fruitful, but maybe making a 2-hour drive to Fairfield's camp is going to be something that might actually move the needle for you.
Yeah.
And I think that that's important, because if you go to the right places and you have good information, it doesn't mean you're going to get an offer, but you're in a place where if you go and play well, you're putting yourself in a position to get recruited, as opposed to being one of those people who walks away from camp and goes, well, I was just a number on the field that day.
Yep.
Like, you shouldn't go to Columbia's camp if you've got a 3.3 GPA.
That's kind of why I led with that, the importance of like having somebody that you trust in the process. And it's hard for families that have that, because like maybe their high school coach isn't that involved, or, their summer coach, might not tell them the truth. I think that's probably happens sometimes, but, and sometimes the right ones certainly do. We know that, but I think that having the right people to lead in them is important. And like another thing with the camps too, is like, we have, JUCOs, we have Division IIs, we have some NAIs, like we have a pretty good variety of other coaches that go, so I think you can kind of get, there's plenty of guys that have gotten recruited out of our place just if it wasn't for us. So I think that's another piece of the camp puzzle that is of value if other schools are going to be there, especially a variety of different levels. Cause I mean, you got a buffet of coaches, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it was one piece that I forgot to mention. I'm glad you did. That a lot of the Division I's will have more than just themselves there. So you get a little bit more bang for your buck.
Yep.
Well, I think we've covered it all, guys.
Yeah, we have said it all. Now,
this might be the last podcast, actually. So it's just after this, we've covered it all.
Yeah, shut it down. Probably nothing else to learn. Glad I could have done that for you.
No, but seriously, thanks for coming on, Joe. Appreciate it, man. I know your time is valuable this time of year, and you guys are up and running. So
that's cool. No, it was fun. It was fun to chat with you guys. It was good. I enjoy talking to good baseball guys, and it was nice to see you guys. Obviously, good to see you guys again. So, if you need anything else from me, let me know if I can help you or whatever. Keep me posted.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening this week. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and smash that like button for us. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, as well as Spotify. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at EMD Baseball. If you want to find out what me and Keith do to help families and players navigate the recruiting process, go ahead and check us out on emdbaseball.com. Take a few minutes to check out our new online academy. I promise you'll get some good information out of that. Thanks again for listening. Check in with you next week.